still up. I'm not sure what's later. Like 8:30.
whole kit, which is normally white and maroon, because we support the CMU cycling team.
Pronounce your last name, Bunnell.
They said it's pretty clear up there.
Bunnell.
In fact, they said, Rick, if you can get away from
Bunnell.
school on Friday afternoon, you ought to come up and train up here. And I may do that.
Yeah.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm going to be led by Leah Bunnell, a student at West Middle School, in the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll have a moment of silence after that, if you'd please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We lead off tonight with appointments. Councilmember Taggart.
I move to reappoint the following to One Riverfront Commission: J. Fred Barbero, Rhonda Buchler, and to appoint to One Riverfront Commission Joel Schultes and Jennifer Reyes, all to 3-year terms ending July 31st, 2023.
I believe we do this by affirmation. Is that correct?
I'll second it.
You seconded it? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 7-0. We have to ratify appointments to the Mesa County Building Code Board of Appeals, and Councilmember Andrews.
Mr. Mayor and fellow members of council, I move to ratify the following to the Mesa County Building Code Board of Appeals: David Reinerston, Ray Rickard, and Thomas Kronk, all to 3-year terms ending July 27th, 2023.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 7-0. Certificate appointments, we've already approved these people, but Councilmember Paya.
I'd like to recognize Byron Weehee, a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2023, and Lisa Whalen, 2-year term ending June 30th, 2022, to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board.
Thank you. And a certificate of appointment also to the Grand Junction DDA Business Improvement District Boards. Councilmember Stout.
Yes, I'd like to recognize the reappointment of Vance Wagner and the appointment of Cole Hansen to the Grand Junction Downtown Development Authority and Business Improvement District Boards for 3-year terms ending on June 30th, 2023.
And again, those have been voted on previously, so those are just acknowledging. And Mr. Wagner, would you like to say anything at the microphone?
I haven't really thought about it, Mr. Mayor, but I'm always glad to talk.
Where is your wife when we need her most?
She's the one that keeps me quiet. Well, I would just say thank you for the vote of confidence again. I enjoyed the first 3 years. I think the DDA did some great work in that first 3 years. We've got a lot of stuff on the books for the next coming 3 years. And I'm glad to be a part of it and glad to be able to serve in any way I can. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for volunteering and putting your name in the ring. I believe, and Cole Hansen, I don't think is here. He's probably working, knowing Cole. Citizen comments. Individuals may comment regarding items scheduled on the consent agenda and items not specifically scheduled on the agenda. This time may be used to address City Council about items that were discussed at a previous City Council workshop. We do have a 3-minute time limit at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The beeper does go off to warn you that there's 30 seconds left. And at the 3-minute time limit, there's a number of beeps that happen consecutively. Those that are waiting outside will be called upon first, and we'll start with this list of names. After all those on the list have spoken, we will try to get to anyone that's on deck that has not signed up and come late. After we get to the last speaker, we will have a little 5-minute break. That's something new, and we will close citizen comments. So Bruce Lowmiller.
Good evening. I am Bruce Lowmiller, and there are 2 or 3 things. We had a school board meeting the other evening, and there are a couple of things that I thought it would be appropriate since the school district has begun classes again. To remind you, one of them is something Sheriff Lewis told me about. If you have issues, wireless issues in school, they have a way of reporting them. It's a am I kicking this thing too?
Yes, that's what you're doing.
You are. If you could just back up a little bit, Bruce.
Okay, it's 241 stop, and it includes M1 holds. If you see an incident and you think it needs to be remedied, please contact that number, and you will be allowed to give them information anonymously. Your position doesn't get compromised, and what they can do is go check the situation and see whatever is actually occurring. If they do need to remedy it, and they have what they call M1 holds, which means they can take the individuals out of these situations and put them into a better situation while they get some understanding of what the situation is. I'm so good. Okay. Anyway, the other one was comprehensive sex ed class. There's a gentleman from CBS News, Major Garrett, that could not only assist the school district, but Bridget's Story asked him nicely to contact Bridget's Story and explain a 1999 Fox News report about normal sex, which isn't. It is an incredibly extensive report. It is excellent. And also, he is now a member of CBS. We're having some issues with KREX, PBS, KREX, Honesty, the whole 9 yards, about covering a piece that was on the CBS Evening News. They said they'd do it, and then they did not do it. But what I would like them to do is get a hold of it and cover it so people understand what they are involved in. It's called post-pursuit syndrome. And that is something that they really actually should tell the people about, and make sure that they don't actually get involved with something they otherwise should not get involved in. Okay, I went to Aspen. Boy, that was cool. I might have caught disease as a joke. But the point being to it is, once upon a time we had quite a discussion about prototype energy sources for your fleets here in Grand Junction and Mesa County and so forth and so on. Well, what I brought you was that, see that guy, is that a goofy looking thing or what? That is an air compression, an Indian air compression taxi cab. This thing has been running in India for years and years and years and years. And I will read you the little blurb that I did for your city council here if I'm not out of time yet. Bruce shared alternative fuel prototype that he shared with Grand Junction, that's you guys, and well, I wish I could see. Okay. He recommended that people please come to City Council, and if they have input for the city, to please make citizens' comments. But that's what it was about, to please maybe math and science or some such thing. I had to talk to the school board about that. Get the math and science people to do a prototype, promote it, and see if that is actually, am I a bad person or what? If they can actually get it to be a viable alternative for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Sure. Bob Jackson.
Good evening. I'm here once again. I asked a couple weeks ago about what may be happening in our city, what is set to happen in our city if we're unfortunate. I have received no input from anyone here at the council. I've received no input from the task force I was advised I was undergoing. I spent 2 hours there the other night, and it was maybe the most wasted 2 hours of my life. If anything comes out of that, I'll be amazed. What I want to know is what the plans is for the city of Grand Junction and Mesa County. If this thing should go sideways, what will be the response by our city and county leaders in respect to providing our property? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson, I'm just verifying your phone number. Could you walk up to me and just make sure that I don't want to broadcast it in case you don't want it broadcast? You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor, I can certainly follow up with Mr. Jackson if you pass along. Yes. Mr. Jackson? Yeah, once I get the number. So, Mr. Jackson, I'll follow up with you. I'm the city manager, Greg Caton. So I'll get your phone number and I'll call you tomorrow. Thank you, sir.
Eric Niederkruger? Niederkruger, excuse me, there's an R in there.
Good evening. My name is Eric Niederkruger, longtime local resident, regional coordinator for the Colorado Poor People's Campaign. Recently, people donated water bowls for the dogs of the homeless. No doubt this is helpful in this mega drought, triple-digit high temperatures, and ash fall from forest fires. Great start. Now, where the hell are the homeless going to be able to fill those water bowls? Indeed, their own water bowls for that matter. I've been raging about third world conditions among our homeless for years, and nobody's done a damn thing yet. Shame on you. Take a public vow tonight to never use your bathroom between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. the way you demand that of the homeless. Turn off your air-conditioned car, home, place of business, stop taking showers, stop washing your clothes. That's what you provide for today's homeless. There are no shelter beds available, haven't been for months, and won't be for months. Call off the police harassment of urban campers tonight. You are violating people's 8th Amendment right to be free from cruel and unusual punishment with every second and penny you spend oppressing our most vulnerable. Citadel Security, Citadel Security, Citadel Security. They patrol downtown. Are any taxpayer funds being used to pay this Citadel Security? What is the memorandum of understanding between the city of Grand Junction and Citadel Security? Homelessness has been intolerable for over a decade now in Grand Junction. It's largely been ignored, and right now it's growing rapidly out of control. You better make time and find money to deal with this injustice immediately, or there will be hell for us all to pay in the near future. I kid you not. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya Wren.
Good evening, council members. My name is Tanya Wren. I was born and reared in GJ. I live in GJ and I'm a local physician. I represent only myself tonight and not the organizations I'm employed by or volunteer with to serve this community. I would like to talk about implicit or unconscious bias tonight. We all have unconscious biases that affect our judgments and actions. These biases are shaped by our life experiences and the culture we live in. A group of scientists from Harvard actually developed a way to measure various biases called the Implicit Association Test, or IAT. It's based on being asked to make some quick decisions. Decisions that go against your unconscious bias take just a bit longer to make than decisions that you don't have to fight your bias with. You can Google IAT and take some tests yourself. It's interesting stuff. So having bias is normal. Having biases you don't like is also normal. I wasn't happy with some of my IAT results, but I understand how I got there, growing up in the culture I did. Humans are complicated, and that's just life. But now that I'm aware of my biases, I can check myself in those situations. So what kinds of things can unconscious bias result in? Well, it sometimes results in some really illogical behavior that only makes sense if you understand that bias is at play. For example, if someone's unconscious bias is that racism doesn't actually exist, otherwise well-meaning white people will tell brown people to their faces that there's no racism in GJ. Brown people express their actual consistent lived experience here, and white people who, by definition, cannot be on the receiving end of bad treatment for having brown skin, are telling brown people that it doesn't exist. How's that logical? Sometimes this bias manifests when white people say they aren't racist because they have a black friend. Using that logic, men who have relationships with women always treat women equally. What? Another bias that our culture has taught us is that brown people are dangerous. If we have this common unconscious bias, then we will be more likely to believe unfounded rumors that BLM is going to bust people into GJ to start a riot. Y'all, GJ is not that important. The only thing people bust in here for is, I don't know, JUCO maybe. Implicit bias might also explain why the city can communicate with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce when they need translation, but somehow lose that line of communication when involvement in grants and opportunities is involved. Implicit racial bias against people of color is rampant. Until we can be humble enough to look at ourselves and our role in it, we will continue to make fear-based decisions and feel threatened from what our own biases tell us and not from what reality is. I ask my city council to continue to address racism in my town and in themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz Sinclair.
Hello, my name is Liz Sinclair and I live and work in downtown Grand Junction. I'm speaking tonight to ensure that this story is part of the public record and to bring to the attention of the council, the members, and members of the community here tonight a specific incident that occurred at the last city council meeting. 2 weeks ago, I was sitting in the overflow room and listening to citizens' comments when a particular young woman got up and spoke. This young woman is a student at CMU. She's an employee of the City of Grand Junction. She's a respected community advocate, and she's a personal friend of mine. Unfortunately, our room contained a large number of counter-protesters, and as such, as soon as the young woman finished speaking, one of them suggested that she wasn't even from here and was in fact Antifa. While I would expect such ridiculousness from the mouths of most of these cretins, what is deeply troubling to me is that this idiot proceeded to hunt the young woman down over the next couple of days and even chose to show up at her work to verify her validity to speak at the city council meetings. You guys, this is beyond unconscionable. And this is the type of behavior that is now being fostered at city council meetings in the name of counter-protesting. And as such, these counter-protesters have gone from being a laughable annoyance to being what now appears to be a credible threat to our community and to the safety in particular of specific citizens. Parading in front of City Hall with their big guns and small penises is one thing, but actively seeking to intimidate, stalk, and infringe on the rights of everyday community members is absolutely unacceptable. And it is well beyond the point where this council needs to make that abundantly clear. We don't need decorum resolutions. We don't need your friends to attend council meetings to solely plead your case. We don't need the Chamber of Commerce to sponsor a billboard for you. What we do need is a unified city council to unequivocally denounce this racist and hateful behavior for exactly what it is. Anything less is an endorsement of this behavior and completely unacceptable, and is, quite frankly, beneath you as our elected representatives. To drive my point home, maybe it would help to reiterate the message of Mike Anton at the last meeting from the opposite perspective. These bikers for Trump, this trailer trash, these gun-toting buffoons, they're not Grand Junction, and we need to send them down the road. Because believe me, there's a lot more of us here in this valley than there are of you. We need to be better, Grand Junction.
Thank you very much. Please. We've done a lot in these last 8 weeks to limit, and we didn't applaud them last week, and 2 weeks ago. We're not going to applaud this week. Thank you very much. We appreciate the words. They mean a lot to this group. Believe me, they mean a lot to this group. There's a lot of friends on both sides of this council that have shown up in the last 8 weeks, and I don't think I'm going out of line to say it. We really appreciate the words. It's meant a lot. It's moved the needle, and I think we're going. I think collectively, we've all stepped forward and done some things that probably, as Tanya Wren would say, were uncomfortable for us to do. So thank you. Ricky Howie.
The lofts on Grand Avenue. Oh, Ricky Howie from the city. The lofts on Grand Avenue has reared its ugly head once again. Early in June, neighbors received an orange card saying that the apartment building was once again going to be constructed. We were asked for our opinions, and this is what I wrote. Will 1020 Grand Avenue LLC make up its friggin' mind? This is the fourth attempt at developing this space, and the 1020 LLC has been a sand spur in the backside of our neighborhood. For 4 years, 1020 LLC has yanked around the neighbors, the drainage authority, the police, the fire department, planning, banks, builders, architects, God knows who else. Let's not forget the 5-hour asbestos spew on a Sunday morning from a leak, or the days when the Mesa County Sheriff's stun bombs practice frightened the entire neighborhood, calls to code enforcement for weed abatement and property maintenance, and also the developers' single-family homes in the Redlands that accumulated about 16 penalties for stormwater drainage with concrete mixed flowing into the Colorado River. So I got a note back, and it was from a senior planner, and the planner said the city will send out the typical notice cards indicating when a public hearing will be held. I want to alert neighbors so it won't come as a surprise. Well, surprise. The first action by the developer without a permit was to repair the HVAC system of the building that used to be Strive. There are incomplete and unsigned forms in the county application forms, and the ownership form that is submitted to the city for its application was unsigned. There are dirt piles, debris at both properties, contrary to their own stormwater plan. The neighbors are unable to obtain site plans of the proposed apartments, and the final approval was given to this apartment complex without notifying anybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Howie. Beverly Hart.
Hi, my name is Beverly Hart, and I'm a resident of Grand Junction, and I'm here speaking up as a citizen advocating on behalf of the post office, of all things. I recognize that you as a city council do not have jurisdiction or responsibility for the post office, but I feel like with so many of our national institutions under such inordinate stress in these days, that it behooves all of us at all levels of government to speak out. And that the post office is a vital part of the infrastructure of rural Colorado and rural America. At our local post office here, the sorting facility, the sorting machine has already been taken out of commission. And the Postmaster General today indicated that he has no intentions of restoring any of the services that he has taken out nationwide. And that the post office employs more than 600,000 people across the country, 100,000 of whom are veterans, in stable, well-paying, and union-supported jobs that enable people to support a family and their community. And that it has been part of our national fabric from the beginning and is enshrined in our Constitution. It provides a needed service to all Americans. It was never intended to be a for-profit business that services only those citizens who live where it's profitable, but something that benefits all Americans. And I would hope the City Council can find a way, either individually, corporately, or both, to indicate your support for this vital institution that is under attack. Thank you.
Thank you. Stefania, I believe. Stefania, sorry. Thank you. That's Conis. Yeah. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Stefania Vasconez, and I am a resident of Grand Junction. Anyone else feel grimy from the falling ash? My feet were like black when I got home. It's pretty gross. You may know me from the mutual aid group or just from being out and about in the community. I think that we can all agree we have the following things in common. We want to feel safe, to love, and to be loved. And often we disagree with each other because of our perceived realities. Take council. Some may think the position is glamorous. Some may think it's uninteresting. But I can't imagine that it's not easy, and unless you've held the position in City Council, your perceived reality is not necessarily the best assumption. So I want to say thank you to Council for working on making our community a more inclusive place for everyone. We see you. I also want to say thank you to everyone else that's here because it shows that you care for our community. Now remember, we all have different realities. So it's likely that our day-to-day experiences and how we interpret those experiences varies significantly. So how can we learn from each other? I think we start with listening. My challenge to you is to come up with ideas that will help unify our community in a positive way. Here's my idea. We hold an open forum roundtable with City Council, community members from different backgrounds. The goal not being to change anyone's mind, the goal would be to simply listen to people's experiences and to perhaps examine our own perceptions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Annie Sweet.
Andy Sweet, citizen of Grand Junction. Hello, City Council members. I see compassion coming from each of you. And Mayor Wardman, I saw your heart. Is Council really expected to come up with all the answers? I quote, "America is stumbling through the darkness of hatred and divisiveness. Our values, our principles, and our determination to succeed as a free and democratic people will give us a torch to light the way, and we will survive and become the stronger. Not only because of a patriotism that stands for love of country, but patriotism that stands for love of people," as Gerald Ford succinctly written 52 years ago, but I think it again applies to today. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the Western Slope Affiliate. And by the way, we just took on Montrose, and we're excited about that. So we educate and advocate and support. I think that the status of our society speaks to the need of improvement of our mental health. I'll ask others to come make public comment to speak on mental health. We believe that if we can repair the mental health of the valley, that peace can be restored. Just wanted to let you know that there are citizens too that are working on finding answers. My subcommittee, which includes an LCSW, 2 of us Grand Valley natives, and the county coroner, has been formed to research why the suicide rate is so particularly high in the Grand Valley. We found data such as the effect of altitude, uranium, or the history of Grand Junction, systemic problems in the hospitals, critical response teams in the police department, street clinicians, criminal cases versus mental cases in the court system, lack of coping skills that lead to drug and alcohol abuse. It's not that men don't want help, it's that we're not getting the right kind of help. We found gaps in data. Those are the attempt survivors. We're forming the study for gathering that data. Some possible solutions are to offer clinician training, fund health, community neighborhoods, and re-enchant the people with thirst. We need to, and we intend to deliver a presentation to you if you'll add us to the agenda, please. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Eddie. Dennis Simpson?
I'm here to compliment the council for the change in the way you're handling meetings, particularly Monday's meetings, in that you no longer set up a rectangular back here with no speakers and with people having difficulty hearing and seeing the people that are speaking. I think you are to be commended for changing your process on Monday and having your meetings with all of you having speakers where people can sit in the audience and they can listen and know who's saying what. It's something that Phyllis started 7 years ago when I asked her to at least take minutes or record the meetings, the Monday meetings, and you did start recording them, but it made it more difficult than necessary for people to access those recordings. But anyway, I want to compliment you, and I want to suggest that you go one step further in the direction of transparency, and that is to record your Monday meetings and put them out on the internet. You know that you make decisions in those meetings. You don't vote, but you do seek consensus, which is as good as making a decision. And it would be good, and it shouldn't be that hard because you're already set up, if you would take the next step and have somebody running the camera here behind me and putting the recording out on the internet and admitting that those are just as much real meetings as the Wednesday night meetings. I imagine the objection will be it costs too much to have somebody back there in that room on Mondays, but I'll point out that up until very recently, you had staff spend, I would guess, a couple hours setting up and a couple hours tearing down this structure that you were using to avoid having you sit up there. So I think it's kind of an offset as far as the expense, and I see no good reason why you would not take the next step. The argument always was, well, we won't be able to talk comfortably if we're having to sit up on the dais. But I watched you 2 Mondays ago, and it seemed like you were all relaxed and you're able to do everything you were doing for years with this structure back here at the back of the room. So once again, I commend you for your change.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Nick Allen.
Thank you, Council, Mayor Wortman. Actually, I'm no longer a citizen of Grand Junction, sadly. I moved a block away from our city limits, so I'm now in Orchard Mesa, but still love the city a lot.
Take care of that, Nick. Just tell us where you are, we'll in it.
Yeah, just give me a little block would be perfect. I missed 2 weeks ago, but I did wake up to the Sentinel's front page. A lot of us did, and we're very shocked and saddened. And I wasn't sure what exactly to speak on tonight, and then I looked at our city mission to become the most livable community west of the Rockies by 2025, 5 years away. My best friend growing up in high school, Andrew Takpo, is a black man. And he is one of the first time in my life where I said, Andrew, I don't know if you should come here. That's rough. That hurts. But then I learned, and I moved from Fort Collins, and I saw what was going on in Fort Collins. Nowhere in this country is really that safe for a black man. And I wasn't sure what my ask would be tonight, but it's two white men. And it's two white men in this room, and it's two white men on the dais. This is our real burden. This is the true burden of white men, is to overcome our history, the history that we created. I'm not saying you didn't have struggles. I had struggles. But one of your struggles was not because of your race and not because of something that you cannot change. There are 4 white men out of 7 people on this dais. So understand, and it's not your fault, but it's something you have to recognize and have to deal with. And I think the best ask that I could honestly make comes from the speaker before me. Please, 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 instead of sitting behind a nice wooden panel, come to the community out and listen, and just listen, because you're going to learn a lot. I've learned a lot. My work in anti-racism has just begun, and it will be going on for the rest of my life. A lot of you saw the Civil Rights Act passed, and that was not over then, and it's not over now, and it probably won't be over when I pass away. But I hope you'll join me in doing everything we can to change this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Matthias Malumbo. Malumba. Excuse me, Matthias.
Oh, my name is Matthias Mulumba, and for me, this is my first time to be here and witness what goes on in this room. I'm from Africa, and I have been here for, it's gonna be like 12 years. First, I would love to really send my appreciation to all of you folks back there for the work you do for our community here. It's hard for anybody to sit back there and get to entertain what goes on from the people that comes here and yell at you and really speak without respect. It really burdens my heart so much. Now, I would love to send my second appreciation to the men in the uniform. These are not our enemies. Me as a black man in this great country, I came here with a suitcase. I had nothing. When I was expecting my first baby, my wife lost her job. I wasn't yet allowed to work here. I went to people's doors and knocked and asked them if they could at least let me pick the leaves, and they paid me some money to buy salt for my family. In this great community, there were food banks that where I could go and get some food and still be able to live. I was still renting from my in-laws. And one house I went to rake the leaves from, the gentleman, I went there, I was missing my tooth here. This is not my tooth, it's missing. And when I walked there, this man was a dentist, and I told him if I can rake his leaves and give me some money to help myself. And this man said, yeah, I'll do that. And I asked him, what you do? He said, I'm a dentist. And I told him, can you please fix my tooth and don't pay me the money? And he said, he laughed at me and he said, that's crazy. We'll talk about it tomorrow. This man was not a black man. This man was not, he didn't look like me. He was a white man. I came back and he told me, Matthias, come to my place. I will fix your smile. When I married my wife, I could not smile because I was missing a tooth. A white man gave me a tooth. Now, to my brothers and sisters who are black and minority in this community. I hear your cry, and I feel your pain. It's true, we need to sit down and have a conversation. But this is the reality. I want you to understand. Black people in this community, we are not victims. We are very powerful men and women who are doing great things in our community. White men in this community, or white ladies in this community, you are not victims. We are all Americans. You know what can really make a difference? If a black man and a white man and a Hispanic man and everyone come together, we can make something beautiful. My wife, she's from Grand Junction, she's a white lady. Me and her, we have such beautiful children, because when you mix white and black, and when all community come together, we come up with something unique. So I want to wind up by saying, black people, we are not victims. And I want to ask you, I know my time is done, but please, folks over there, this is my humble request. I don't want to see what is happening in Seattle ever happens to Grand Junction. These men are back here, the officers, they deserve our respect, they deserve our love, they deserve our support.
Thank you, Matthijs.
God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jay Freeman.
Good evening, Jay Freeman, member of this community. Just want to ask everybody, do you guys feel safe tonight? Everybody feel comfortable, safe, yeah?
I'm safe.
Let me express to you what has happened since a comment about a Glock 19. We have now people in our community, people that live here, pay taxes. They're in fear of their life. That's what we have going on. We have people coming to other people's places of work, their homes, to check if they live here. Who are you to do that? That's what's going on. So my guy that's saying we're not victims, yeah, because nothing physical has happened, but come on, man. What we seen 2 weeks ago, it's crazy to think about. We showed up here to just have discourse and conversation with city council members. And we're kind of being intimidated to not do that or to not participate in that. You can call it what you want, people expressing their Second Amendment, I'm all for that. But when that leads to people getting followed home, people popping up at people's workplace, are we really safe? Is everything really okay? It's okay because we're not a victim yet. But what's really going on in this community? I have nothing more to say.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. We'll take a 10-minute break. Well, we'll take 9 minutes. At 6:50, we'll reconvene. Thank you very much.
How was the first week of school going? Well, that's what I like. Yeah.
Up next on my piece of paper says City Manager's Report.
No report this evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
God bless America. Okay. Council reports. Councilman Taggart.
Yes, I have. We had a board meeting last night of the One Riverfront Commission, and if council is agreeable to this, the Riverfront Commission would really like to have breakfast or lunch once a year with us and talk to us about what's going on in terms of the trail, and give us a status and ask us for help from time to time, whether that be help with a property owner or help with funding from time to time. But I said I would bring it up this evening, and hopefully we do it for some of the other major boards, and I think it would be good to have them communicate with us once a year. So if everybody's okay with that, I'll get Belinda started on a lunch or
I think that'd be a wonderful idea.
Or breakfast in fourth
It's better for that group because we're smaller than that group is, so maybe we can be more nimble and be more receptive. Councilman Taggart, I think that'd be a great idea. Seems like they have some things that are going on that are glorifying the river finally, and they have some reasons to be excited. Councilman Stout, Councilmember Stout, excuse me.
Yes, so first just the DDA, for everybody's information here, the last DDA meeting was actually a joint council and DDA meeting, so I won't get into many of the details because there was nothing new decided, but rather it was exactly what Councilman Taggart is requesting for One Riverfront, which is the DDA updating the city council on what's been going on downtown over the last year. The Arts Commission meets next week and is moving forward with a new cultural plan, which happens every 2 years. And the task force met last Thursday and is continuing the foundation building work of what will become its own standalone organization. So the group is working right now on objectives, and a subcommittee has met since then and is working to take the ideas of the larger group and condense them into something cogent and encompassing everything that's been presented and suggested, and that'll go back to the task force next Thursday for discussion and voting. So it's moving ahead, but of course still in the building stages of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, it seems like forever ago, but on August 7th, I had the opportunity to attend and speak at the fire department's graduating class. It was held at Las Colonias. We welcomed 17 new firemen and women to our ranks. It was an amazing turnout with family, friends, city staff, and hot temperatures. But it was just it was wonderful to sit and see the family support as these young men and women start this new endeavor and career, and just was a pleasure to be able to represent council at that event, and it was wonderful.
Thank you. Councilman Paya. Thank you. Councilman McDaniel.
Nothing more. I said my little piece earlier.
Okay. Phyllis?
Thank you. I just wanted to say, Craig, you did a great job, and it was really a pleasure to be there and see these firemen with their getting pinned by their significant other or their mother or their father. It's just very moving, and it's a very big part of our city, and you did a great job on your presentation. Thank you. We also, another big thing that happened is our Dos Rios groundbreaking, which was on 8/17. And Mayor, you did a good job speaking, and we had several people who are going to be a part of Dos Rios speaking. So it was really very, very good. And then I just also wanted to say that, yeah, the council and DDA meeting was very informative, and I think it's good that we do these, because then we know what all of these committees are doing, and if we know what they're doing, we can all work together and really make a difference as we all work together. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I had a couple things that I took part in. One was, I'll go backwards from today. The GJEP meeting this morning. Things are progressing nicely over there. We are still getting some nice looks, and even Robin Brown admitted the last 3 weeks have seemed relatively normal for GJEP and the activity level that companies are looking at Grand Junction. A few companies expanding. I think I saw roughly with the win within Focus, somewhere around 400 new jobs coming to the Valley in the next 12 months. And so that's pretty exciting. Infocus has already hired 30 previous folks that worked at the call center on North Avenue. StarTech, thank you. StarTech, thank you. Went to the Peace Road 2020 rally on Friday night. Councilmember Stout and Councilmember McDaniel were there. It was nice to hear. My grandson went with us. He is 9, and I didn't know if he was bored or not. He kept leaning over into me, and I think he was just showing his love, I guess, at the end, because he spoke for the next hour about things in the community that he didn't know existed. And he said, he calls me Pop, and it was a nice exchange of conversation, and he very much mirrored me when I was a child, and the way that he's being raised. And so it was encouraging for the next generation for sure. Also, I was emailed this week by Jenna Thomas. Jenna is the wife of Chris Thomas at Community Hospital, and Jenna's adopted son, Andrew, is a wonderful little child, and he is encouraged by his parents that if you don't like something, do something to change it. And Andrew is collecting crayons and boxes of crayons, washable markers, and he needed 30 boxes, and my company is in the moving business, so we have cardboard everywhere, and I donated 30 boxes to him, and Andrew's going to bring one of those boxes to every school in the Valley, and I think there's 30 elementaries or thereabouts that affect. Maybe with the middle schools there's 30, so the number could be a little bit off, but his statement is every color deserves to be in the crayon box, and every color deserves to be recognized in this community. And so Andrew's a young black child and was adopted at the age of, I believe, 2 by the Thomases. And he's a bright, shiny example of what can happen in this community if we give it a chance. So thank you. We'll go on. The consent agenda is next. Good grief. Okay. The consent agenda is intended to allow the City Council to spend its time on more complex items. These items are generally deemed to be non-controversial in nature or having been discussed previously. The consent agenda is usually approved by a single motion. City Council members will request that an item be removed from the consent agenda for individual consideration. If anyone in the audience has questions on any item on the consent agenda, they may contact either City Council or City staff for additional information. So I would look for a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
This is an affirmation vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Okay, regular agenda, public hearings. Legislative, a resolution adopting the 2020 program year annual action plan as part of the Grand Junction 5-year consolidated plan for the Community Development Block Grant CDBG program. Kristen Ashbeck.
Is that on there? Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Wortman and members of City Council. Kristen Ashbeck, Principal Planner with the City Community Development Department. I'm also Administrator of our CDBG program. As you stated, tonight's hearing is to formally adopt the city's 2020 Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, Annual Action Plan. Each year, a specific plan of action for expenditure of CDBG funds is adopted as part of our 5-year plan. In July, Council approved CDBG funding for 16 projects that totaled the $469,314 allocation, which will become the 2020 Program Year Action Plan. The CDBG projects must meet national objectives as well as our goals and strategies set out in our 5-year plan that we currently have in force. I won't go over those projects in detail since those were discussed 2 weeks ago or a month ago, but I can break them down by our project list by those goals within our 5-year plan. The first project is program administration. The 5-year plan specifies that the city will expend a portion of its fund on administration activities. During the 2020 program year, staff will complete the analysis of impediments to fair housing study and the 5-year consolidated plan that must be adopted in July of 2021 by City Council. There are 3 projects that address our goal in our plan for improving non-housing community infrastructure, and these are to be carried out by nonprofit agencies. Homeward Bound will continue to improve the outdoor day use space at the community homeless shelter. Strive will provide new HVAC equipment at its wood shop, where they employ many of their clients. And the Community Food Bank will replace the roof on its recently acquired warehouse. In addition to those projects, there are 3 infrastructure projects that will be completed by the City of Grand Junction that meet this goal also. A grant to the Public Works Department will complete a Safe Routes to School project on Elm Avenue. The Parks and Recreation Department will make improvements in Westlake Park. And CDBG funds will be used by the Utilities Department for a 3rd phase of a project to replace the lead water lines in homes downtown. 5 2020 projects will address the affordable housing and homeless goal of our 5-year plan. A grant to Homeward Bound to the Grand Valley will be used to purchase new bunk beds and personal storage for the shelter. Strive will remodel 4 of its group homes for their disabled clients. The Housing Authority will repair foundation damage to an 8-plex at the Linden Point Apartments on Orchard Mesa. Caris will complete rehabilitation work on 2 homes that are or will be used for its homeless youth housing program. And Housing Resources of Western Colorado will utilize CDBG funds towards emergency home repairs for low and moderate income households, primarily in manufactured homes. Then we have 4 projects that will address the 5-year plan goals for special needs, persons, and human services. Those include grants to the Counseling and Education Center to provide services for low-income individuals and families. Hope West will utilize CDBG funds for counseling at schools and day camps for their youth grief program. The Marillac Clinic will purchase dental equipment, diagnostic equipment at its new satellite clinic they've established at the Mesa County Human Services Building. And Hilltop will use CDBG funds to purchase a van to safely transport their clients at the Latimer House. In summary, the total funding allocation for the 2020 program year is $469,134, which has been allocated in its entirety to the 16 projects discussed. A 30-day public review period of the annual action plan has been underway since August 3rd, and comments will be accepted through September 4th. To date, we have not received any comments on the plan. Upon approval by City Council, the annual action plan will be submitted to HUD for approval, and once our funds are released, we will be able to begin our program year. That concludes my presentation. Does Council have any questions? We've been through this, yes.
This is a public hearing, and so it is now open.
Mr. Mayor, could you turn your mic on, please?
Should I?
Thank you.
This is a public hearing and now open. If any citizens have any public comment, please come to the microphone. There is a 3-minute time limit. Seeing no citizens, we will close the public hearing and come back to council. I will ask for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 5120, a resolution adopting the 2020 program year annual action plan as part of the Grand Junction 5-year consolidated plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Wanda, would you call a roll?
Councilmember Peya?
Yes.
Councilmember Stout?
Yes.
Councilmember Taggart?
Yes.
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yes.
Councilmember Norris?
Yes.
Mayor Wortman?
Yes, 7-0, 7-0. It passes. Quasi-judicial resolution to vacate public utility and irrigation easements, an ordinance to vacate the platted public right-of-way of West Cliff Drive as identified on the second addition to Onan subdivision located by Horizon Drive, North 12th Street, Midway Avenue, and Budlong Street. Senior Planner Scott Peterson.
Mayor Wortman, council members, I'm Scott Peterson, Senior Planner, Community Development Department. This is a request for the vacation of platted right-of-way of West Cliff Drive and also some public easements, utility and irrigation. These easements and rights-of-way were identified on the second addition to the Onan subdivision. The applicant for this request is the property owner, which is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting for the proposed vacations back in March of this year. The applicant's representative and myself were in attendance, along with about 25 area residents. Comments received regarding the two requests centered around what the future development and our impacts to the neighborhood would be, if any. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of these proposed requests at their July 28th meeting. This is the site location map. The subject properties are located by Horizon Drive, North 12th Street, Midway Avenue, and Budlong Street. The Safeway Shopping Center complex is located to the north, and Horizon Towers is located to the west, as you can see on the monitor. This is a closer aerial photo of the property. With this application, the applicant is requesting to vacate the existing platted right-of-way of West Cliff Drive between what is now Midway and Horizon Drive as identified on this slide. The properties are presently zoned R4, which is 4 dwelling units to the acre. However, to date, no development has taken place and no utility infrastructure has ever been installed, such as water, sewer, or streets within the subdivision. Since this platted subdivision has never developed, access to any developed existing residential lot will not be inhibited. Upon future development of the site, new rights-of-way and/or public easements for the proposed development would be dedicated as necessary on a new subdivision plat or by separate instrument. This slide shows the existing 30 platted residential lots, easement locations, and their right-of-way within the existing subdivision plat that were conveyed in 1960 as identified on the plat. The existing utility and irrigation easements are located within the center of blocks 1 and 2, and also separate irrigation easements along the outside perimeter of the blocks. The properties were annexed into the city limits in 1980. This slide shows the current zoning in the area, which is R4. And this slide is taken from Google Street Maps and shows the properties from the roundabout at the intersection of North 12th and Horizon Drive. This photo was taken in July of last year. Pursuant to Section 2102-100C of our zoning code, requests for a vacation of public right-of-way or easement shall demonstrate conformance with the following review criteria as found on this slide. The Planning Commission and city staff found that all 6 of the review criteria do have been met. Also, no comments were received from utility companies or other service providers that these vacation requests would create any adverse impacts or that facilities or services would be diminished. Additional discussion and detail regarding these individual review criteria can be found and was identified within your staff report that was in your packet this evening. Findings of fact, after reviewing the request to vacate the platted public right-of-way of West Cliff Drive and the public easements for the utility and irrigation easements, the following findings of fact and conditions have been met. The requested vacation does not conflict with the goals and policies of our comprehensive plan, and the request conforms with section 2102-100C of our zoning code. There is one condition of approval, which is prior to recording of the ordinance to vacate the right-of-way, an approved and recorded subdivision plat or alternative document as otherwise approved by the city, consistent with city standards, which removes the existing lots located adjacent to West Cliff Drive so that no existing lot will be landlocked is required. And that concludes my presentation, Mayor Wortman. And the applicant's representative is also here for any follow-up questions.
Does the applicant have a presentation?
They do not.
They do not. Does council have any questions of this vacation? No? This is a public hearing, so if there's any citizens that would like to comment, please come forward. Seeing no one move, we'll just close that public hearing. Since the applicant doesn't have a rebuttal, can I ask a question? I can always ask a question, right? After it comes back after citizens, as long as I wait my turn. My question would be, is there a proposed development going on here? Or is this a step necessary to do a development next?
Good evening, Council. Tracy States with River City Consultants. I represent the applicant. They are looking at developing the site with possibly a church and some outbuildings, and this is a necessary step in order to make that a developable site.
I thought so. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, if there's no other questions, I'd ask council for a motion.
Mayor Workman, members of council, I move to adopt ordinance number 4950, an ordinance vacating West Cliff Drive right-of-way as identified within the second edition of Onan subdivision, as recorded within reception number 764963, located between Horizon Drive and Midway Avenue, on final passage in order of final publication in pamphlet form. And I move to also adopt resolution number 5220, a resolution vacating all public utilities and irrigation easements as identified within the second edition of the Onam subdivision, as recorded within reception number 764963, located by Horizon Drive, North 12th Street, Midway Avenue, and Budlong Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Wanda, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Stout?
Yes.
Councilmember Taggart?
Yes.
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yes.
Councilmember Norris?
Yes.
Councilmember Peya?
Yes.
Mayor Wortman?
Yes, 7-0. We'll move on. Items related to November 2020 coordinated election, a resolution setting a title and submitting to the electorate on November 3rd, 2020, a measure to allow the city to collect, retain, and spend revenues as a voter-approved revenue change is provided for and defined by Article X, 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution. Mr. Caton and John Shaver, please.
Mr. Mayor, the city manager will be presenting this item to you, and certainly we'd be happy to answer any questions following that presentation.
Thank you. We will have citizen comments, even though they weren't published that way, but we will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. As indicated, my two colleagues will assist in this presentation. Ms. Welch and I have switched seats, and for the record, she'd make a better city manager than I would a finance director. But nevertheless, with that, wanted to, just for the record, chat about this. Council's very familiar with this item, but I do think it's important to frame the issue. And so we'll go through just a few slides very briefly. The 1992 Tabor Taxpayer Bill of Rights, and you can never exempt yourself from the first two bullet points, voter approval for all authorized tax increases or any debt. And so when we talk about de-Brucing, and Douglas Bruce was the author, so that's why they name it that way. It's much like now, I'll digress for a minute, and that with many cities and of course the state were considering de-Gallagherizing because of the 1982 constitutional item. And so for many years this has been referred to as de-Brucing, and quite frankly we're bringing this forward because of the pandemic. pandemic. And I honestly think this would have larger discussion all across the state if many communities hadn't already debruced. So we're the exception to the rule, and that's why it feels like it's just us addressing this situation, because it is, quite frankly. So that's what it really is. It's what we're discussing is removing the limitation of the revenue and expenditure situation. So what we really are concerned about is, and we're being proactive looking forward, is this ratchet down effect. It's typically about $800,000 to $1 million any given year, but because we're anticipating our revenues for 2020 are going to drop substantially, then hoping for a positive 2021, that creates a larger gap, and that gap is excess, if you will, and that is what we're anticipating to be a significant issue. And really my next slide here gets into really the meat and potatoes. And I won't read all of these numbers, but some of these are actuals and some of these are hypotheticals, but I wanted to put some context to what we're talking about and the significance. So we'll walk through this. I'll start off here with really this bullet point of 2019, the Tabor limit being the 34.3 million. And so then we move on, and in each year we have this growth allowance. And what happens, I'll digress just for a minute, in any normal given year we're allowed, and we're using a rate of 3.2%, then we're just allowed to go up each year. And the concept was to limit the growth of government. And that's what we have in place. The challenge is when you have 1 year, a significant drop in your revenue, then that sets a new base. And you have previously been using those dollars for regular city operations. So what we have here in 2020 is a revenue limit of $35.4 million. Now recognize that our sales tax, and this is just on the 2% by the way, and we also have growth limitations on others such as property tax. And as council knows, it's taken about 10 years to really keep increasing on the property tax, and that's where we had an excess, even when we had lower sales tax, and overall we had budget reductions, we had to do layoffs, but we had an excess in the property tax situation because there's some additional calculations there, so it's extremely complex. But in this scenario, when council knows we have an excess, the excess we have today is approximately the difference between the $35.4 million and the $36.2 million. And we're allowed to use that. We've asked the voters, and through 2022, that excess, again, of approximately $800,000, through 2022, we can use for street maintenance. And then from 2023 through 2037, we can use it for expansion of roadways, and we've already issued the $50 million debt. And so through 2037, there is not the likelihood of reissuing money to the community, and that's what happens if you have an excess. You either ask to use it for a certain purpose or you return it to the community. We have asked to use it for a specific purpose pre-pandemic. That still remains in place even if that excess gets larger. So there's no opportunity to return dollars to the community. This is just a matter of where those dollars go. So what happens in the $35.4 million, that goes to Public Works, that goes to Parks and Recreation, that goes to the police department, goes to the fire department. It is general fund dollars that we are currently using within our operations. So $35.4 million we're using today. Then as we go through some of the other scenarios, we'll see where a normal year it would just modestly increase to the 36.2. What happens though, if you take the 36.2 that we're projecting for this year, and then this is where it gets a little hypothetical, where we project a 15% decrease for 2020. So we started off at 25%. We'll quite frankly end up probably closer to 10-ish, but now we're gradually moving that down, and for this example, we've used 15%. So when you ratchet, now we're starting to ratchet that back down. So when you ratchet that 36.2 down, then our new base becomes the 30.7. So then that would become our new base after 2020, and then again, using an assumption growth rate of 3.2%, we put the 3.2% on the 30.7, and that gets to the 31.8. That becomes our new base. However, we need, in today's operations, 35.4. So in that example, we have a new excess added to our old excess of 3.6 million from the 35.4, and then you add another million if you were to count the 36.4. So that's where we get this approximate 4%, and this is just on the sales tax. So the $4 million, again, would not go back to the community. It would go to those purposes that we asked them for, and in 2023 through 2037, it would go to paying the debt. And we've already have funds to pay for the debt, but then we would have to cut approximately the $4 million out of our general fund. So that's the ratchet down and how it impacts existing dollars today that are being utilized. Here's kind of a visual. You'll see it really just takes years at that 3.2%. So we would have this added excess, and you can see the little excess here in 18 through 20. That's the additional, that's the $800 to $1 million that we talk about, and then that significant ratchet down there in 2020, and then depending upon how we bounce back, and we would hope that the economy will bounce back here. You can kind of see where my cursor is, but then this would create this large excess, and again, that's the approximate, because we don't know how low we'll go in 2020 and then how high we'll go in 2021. But I will quote my colleague, Mr. Shaver, any ratchet is a bad ratchet. And so it's really conceptual here, whether it's $500,000 or $5 million, we would have to find that and cut out of existing operations. And so so we've kind of talked about the issues of debrucing. And again, here's just a short list. There's a long list, and in your documentation you see the total number, but here are just some comparable cities, and you see the year of when they did debruce. And so again, this would be just statewide. We would be hearing this all over the paper if other cities were in our situation. And admittedly, we're a little proactive on this because of still figuring out how low we go in 2020 and then where we go in 2021. With that, that completes my presentation, and certainly, again, any specifics regarding ballot language, any specifics, or a little bit more in the details regarding financials, certainly my colleague, Ms. Walsh, would be able to handle that.
Fire away. Greg, can you go back to the slide with the graph on it, please?
Most definitely.
I just wanted to confirm, for the benefit of people who are here tonight or who are watching this on one of our streams, that will you put your cursor back where you were on 2021 with that large excess there?
Yes.
So just to clarify, the way that currently that excess would not be returned to voters because we have a Tabor override specifically for roads and transportation. So that large amount there would be available to roads and transportation only until what year? Till 2020?
You're spot on. You're spot on, Councilmember Stout. Through 2022. Oops. Sorry about that. Through 2022 22 for street maintenance, and that was the 5-year commitment to the community. We did it in 2017, trying to get our PCI, pavement condition index, up. And then the most recent one we took from 2023 through 2037. So again, you are spot on. And typically that's the large argument is community members will get dollars back, and there's no dollars coming back through 2037.
So essentially, what the voters will be deciding on this, well, there are two things. One is that excess, we already have, we're already keeping that excess. So basically, it would free that excess up to not only be used for roads and transportation, and therefore it could be used for general funding. Otherwise, that is available for roads and transportation. So we'll have potentially tons of money, or maybe not tons, but we'll have money available for roads and streets, but potentially be cutting massively in the rest of city services. And then the other question that voters are deciding is that rather than this ending in 2037, as we have authorization currently, it would be in perpetuity.
That is
correct.
That is.
Thank you.
One, if I does spur a thought, just a brief comment. The other thing is, I think some people might say, well, you made a commitment when you went out to utilize the excess to build the roads and expand and do the debt, and now you may not have to do that. Well, my answer to that would be we've already issued the $50 million worth in debt, and we have committed to the additional 20, and we had always committed to a total of 70, and we've already issued the debt at $50 million. So the normal excess will be used for that purpose, and then the new excess will be used for existing what we're doing today.
So what you're saying then is just as a way of sort of reassuring voters that that money that was already approved in the Tabor excess override for roads and transportation, that same amount will still be dedicated to that, so that people don't worry that it's just going to get commingled with the regular general fund, and that those road commitments and transportation commitments will still be met.
Spot on. Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
John, the ballot measure itself actually is readable.
Yes, sir, it is.
Did you screw something up, or?
No, sir. For purposes of the constitutional amendment, as the city manager just described, what this provision does is it suspends the application of the formula.
Yep.
And that is allowed by the Constitution as Article 10, Section 20, the Tabor Amendment, in this form.
Yeah. My serious question is, does it comply with all the rules of Tabor? And
yes, sir, it does. We are working presently on the Tabor notice, which is another portion of this, assuming that the council favorably considers this tonight. That is also a provision of the Constitution, but this particular question is consistent with this constitutional authority.
Yeah. In the Tabor notice, do we get to explain what Greg has just talked about?
The Tabor notice will be a little bit different, back to your comment about readability, because typically the Tabor notice will include a projection of estimated revenue or expenditure, so it will have typically numbers in it. This Tabor notice won't have any numbers because there's no numbers involved, because it is not either a tax increase question or a debt question. It will have the 500-word summaries, the pro and con summaries, which are required by the Constitution as well, and it will have some specific factual information about the election.
That's all, thanks.
Greg? No?
I do.
Phil, Scott?
Okay. I just want to clarify, because I want to make sure I understand this, and I know I've questioned you about this 2 or 3 times, but first of all, we had 2 elections that citizens said, yes, keep this money to do and one of them is specific projects to be completed. And in the other one, it is getting our street maintenance up to, I think it was 72 is what our goal was, but we're already at 73. But we're still working on that. We still have 2 years on the street maintenance, and we estimated it was, I think at that time, about $1 million a year would be going into this street maintenance plus we continue to fund our street maintenance, what we always did. This is additional money we have put in there. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Norris. So we went in 2017, and there was a savings account, if you will, because we were going to be paying off the Riverside Parkway early. That we had been saving those dollars, and then we were going to be able to use that in addition to new excess created after 2017. And then also what we called a maintenance of effort. And a maintenance of effort just sets a baseline before you do some Tabor excess. And that's a way to prove to voters that you're not just moving money around, quite frankly. And we committed to that because we were serious about the concept and improving our roads. So we committed to a $2.8 million maintenance of effort. And then the Tabor excess goes on top of that. So it's essentially been about $6 million a year, little 6 and some change for a 5-year period for $33 million. We were at about a 78 pavement condition index, 0 to 100, 100 being good. In about 2004, it had dipped to 69. The goal was to get to 73. After 2 years, we were already at 71, and we think we're on track to 76, and it even exceed that 73. So, you know, every summer you feel the maintenance around this. And then also what's really important is we recognize that once we get back up to the level, catch up, we've been catching up, then we have to maintain. And we also recognize as we get more roads and more annexation, remember the 2.8 maintenance of effort? 2.8 we don't believe is going to be enough in the future. Right. It is pegged anywhere from about 3.5 to 4 million. We've done some internal strengthening of some resources. You're familiar with that, the project team. We've doubled how quickly we get to neighborhoods. So we think we can do it around 3.5 or so. So we're planning on that. And interestingly enough, we were actually just planning for 5 years. If you count 2017, it really should go through 2020 because we did it. We jumped right in right after the election in 17. So we counted 17. So it's actually going to be 6 years when you count through 2022. And then with the expansion, to your point, Councilmember Norris, then we have $70 million worth of projects. We're still committed to that. And again, we've already issued debt of $50 million. And some people might say, well, why didn't you issue the entire 70? You have to utilize those funds over approximately a 3-year period. We just can't do $50 million worth of work. And of course, we're outsourcing this to the community and can't do that much work in that short amount of time. So we needed to phase it with 50 and 20, and then we have planned to go out in 2023 for those additional projects. So that's already, and we've already done the design for many of the 2021 projects. We designed, of course, in 2020, lots of construction occurring in 2021.
And Councilmember Norris, Mayor Wortman, I might add, from a legal perspective, this question does not amend, modify, repeal, or otherwise affect any of the prior voter approvals. And in fact, what we've done is specifically affirm the use of the dollars, as has been a consistent practice of the city and the city council, to list the uses of the money. And even though it isn't specific to a project, what we have beginning on line 61 is to say if the voters approve this authorization, it would pay for police, fire, parks, and any other government services, and to the transportation question, improvements including street improvement projects and transportation infrastructure. Simply allowing for the use of the formula excess for all of those purposes.
I might just add one quick element. Interestingly enough, even though we only went for a 10-year temporary on those elements, if you will, when we issued the debt for $50 million, we went 29 years.
So we know we're going to have to pay that. Would you go back to the slide that shows the ratchet down, and not this one, but the one that shows the numbers, what percent okay, this is it here. And it shows where we're at. In 2020, our Tabor limit is 35.4 million, and that's with a 3.2 growth rate, and that is allowed by Tabor. So anything over that 35.4 million that we collect goes into the fund that citizens said, yes, you can have that money. So if this is voted in, what happens to that 34.4 or 35.4 million and the 3.2 allowed growth? Does that just go away and we don't worry about that anymore? Or is the plan that we would say, okay, this is what we're allowed and this is what we will continue to keep, and anything over that will go to the projects that the citizens have approved? How will you determine how much will go to those projects?
Great question, Councilmember Norris and then Mayor. I'll start off, and then I think I'm going to need my two colleagues to put an exclamation mark on it. But my short answer would be, right now, the difference between let me back up. So when we get to the 50 million and how we're going to pay for the 50 and ultimately really the 70, how we got is ultimately going to be about $4.8 million a year in debt service. And we had historically been paying approximately 3.8 on the Riverside Parkway. So then the message was, let's continue what we have been paying for expansion, Riverside Parkway, take the 3.8, and then, because that's existing funds, and then again about $1,800,000 to $1 million a year for Tabor excess. That's how we get to the 4.8. So then, and then how we get to that on this chart is right now we're utilizing the 35.4 in existing operations, and then the difference between the 35.4 and the 36.2, because that's where the excess is generating, and we have to pay that. So we have to take, because we've already issued the debt, we need to take anything over the 30, just using kind of this example, anything over the 35.4, we need to make debt service. And that was its only use, too. And then I looked to my colleagues to add to that.
And Councilmember Norris and Mayor Wortman, I would certainly echo what the city manager said and even take it a step further to say the voters also approved $70 million. And the commitment has been made, and the budgeting of the city manager, what he will bring to you for your review and approval in the city manager's budget annually will anticipate utilization of the dollars necessary to fund those projects that were previously approved by the voters.
I guess my question is, on this Tabor limit, this 35 million, and it goes up every year, and it needs to go up every year because we have more and more things we have to do. But we're allowed to grow our base by 3.2%, and that's a fair thing for the citizens, and to say that. But what if we have, what if it just goes crazy and we end up having a lot more come in? Are we going to have that money stay in this Tabor funds to work on our base, or are we going to come back and say, okay, this is some growth things we need to do, and maybe it's capital or whatever we need to do within the city? Would that come back separately, or would it just go into this fund and be part of operations and just keep expanding operations instead of saying, okay, we're getting a lot more than we thought, so let's look at it in another area?
So that's certainly a complex question, Councilmember Norris. So let me try to answer it, and again, look to my colleagues to see if they want to add to it. I think what's also important to bring in the property tax situation that we were in, where we were in an excess in property since late 08s, 9s, and then yet over here with this other revenue stream in sales tax, then we had lost. As you know, we just came back to our roughly 08 levels in 2018 in sales tax. But then we're in an excess situation over here in property tax, and so that's challenging. And then yet over a 10-year period, we have spent considerable more dollars in public safety, police department, fire department. So we were having to cut in other areas. And our revenue streams will grow more than, hopefully, 3.2. The 3.2 in this just is really restrictive. So to your point, it's really a policy decision on an annual basis. And the way we use these is particularly with growth. If it's really growth related, and we've never been, I'll call it, in the luxury of this position in this community.
Never.
No, because
I know that.
Because of the Tabor situation. This is my third Colorado community and the only one that hasn't been debruced. And so what I have seen in other communities, I'll call them growth dollars. When you truly get a spike in your revenues because of growth, I have seen cities pull those aside for more one-time expenditures, because what you don't want to do is load one-time revenues into ongoing expenditures. So again, we've never had that luxury of really being able to pull it apart that way. So that's how if we were fortunate to be in that situation, we're just trying to, that may occur in 2023, 2022. I'm seriously concerned about that ratchet down effect over the next 2 years.
And I agree with that, and I think citizens agree that we can't just pull out all these services just because we had a downturn. And that's why one reason we have the reserves we do, and we need to build those reserves back because we have been using those, and the whole idea of having those is when we hit times like we have this last year and possibly next year as well, we have that money to keep us going. And to have a ratchet down where we don't even have our base, we can't do that. I just want to feel comfortable that we're not going to just hire hundreds of people and just expand our services when we really want to watch everything being spent. And of course that comes back to the councils and who's elected and who sits on this council to say, no, you can't increase your expenses 20% this year. You're going to have to keep your expenses reasonable expansion, like the 3.2 growth, and spend that money, either put it in our reserves or put it, to a capital project that we feel that we really need. And there are things we need that are not, that we don't have taxes or money to take care of. But that's my concern, and I think that would be the concerns of our citizens. And I think my answer to that is that we better have people on council that are really looking at the dollars and making sure we're spending the dollars where we need to. And I think you do a very good job on your budget of not just allowing everybody to add on, and you have really restricted the spending this year, and I appreciate what you've done. And so I think that's an indication that this will work in this city. Thank you.
Greg, when you first came here, your first year, how much money did you take? How much in dollars did you cut from the employment standpoint? Was it 2.3 or 3.1?
Yeah, it was in the several million, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I often say we touched about 31 positions. The gap was so large. We started off, if memory serves me, it was around $4 or plus $1 million deficit, and I present a balanced budget, and I often remind City Council that they never come to me balanced, and so the needs might exceed our revenue opportunities. And so we go through that exercise, line item by line item, and whittle it down. And then what happened, we did that, and then it was like, uh-oh, we've got a bigger gap. How do we close this? The fund balance was not in a good condition then.
Right.
And so why I say touch some of those, we offered voluntary early retirements, we downgraded some positions, things of that nature, and then
Which displays to the public that we're not afraid to ratchet back when we had to. It was somewhat desperate. It was something that was seen as long ago as 2011 and 12, that 15 and 16 were coming, and it was going to be an ugly time when you have to face those people and say, look, you got to move on, and thanks for your service. And those were bloody times. Nobody's mood was good, and I don't think the mood in the city was that good because they were tough times here, and we've all faced so many tough times. Tough times don't last, thank goodness, and tough people do. So this is a citizen comment time. I would open up. If someone would like to speak, please state your name and if you're a resident of the city. You have a 3-minute time limit at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The clock will buzz, and at 3 minutes it'll buzz continually.
I'm Dennis Simpson. This is the first time you've asked for any public opinion, and you're going to give me 3 minutes. I have an analogy I'd like to place. I know I'm wasting a little bit of my time. This is like a civil case where you're the jury, and the plaintiff has had approximately 10 hours to present his side of the argument. And me, the defendant, has 3 minutes. So I'm going to have to jump to conclusions that I wish I could build up to prove that most of this stuff is nonsense that you're hearing from Greg. This is about trying to get rid of Tabor in Grand Junction once and for all. There's an easy argument to say it has nothing to do with we're going to have to cut the fire department and the police department and the rec department if you don't vote for this thing now. We're using COVID as an excuse to do what Greg wanted to have done when he came to town, was to get rid of Tabor. Granted all of that, the timing is the one thing that at least has been thought of by one or two of the councilors. Why now? And there is no reason why now. You have several options when you have better data. He's guessing that you'll have a 15% hit on your revenue, but he admits you might have 10%. You may only have 5%. And there are several elections in the near future, where you can solve this problem when you know what it is. The first one is next April. And next April, you still won't have a good idea of how much the ratchet down is going to cost, if any. But at least you know more than you know now. The next time would be November of 2021, which you will have more information. You'll have a better estimate. And the next time after that would be November of 22. Because keep in mind, the hit on your budget will not happen in 2021. 2021 you'll spend as if nothing had happened. The hit, if it happens, will be in 2022 when you compare your 2021 revenue to your 2020 and see perhaps a reduction. So that's not even the last time. So in November 2022, you can say, look, guys, if you don't let us move this money, we're going to have to cut the fire department. And then the next one is April of 2023, which would be the final time where people could be asked, look, we know the real numbers, and if you don't vote this in April of 2023, we're going to have to cut the fire department, police department, all that. This is just a scam to get something through now and use the COVID situation as an excuse.
Are there any citizens that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Adrienne Cascarella. I'm actually a resident of Whitewater. I am just, as a voter, just trying to get clarification and completely understand what the most simplistic definition of debrucing is. Because I've listened to the entire presentation and I have a sort of vague idea, but I'm not really clear on what it means to debruce this. Does it mean that rather than allowing the Tabor limit to go down with the revenue, it will stay the same? Is that what debrucing is, so that it doesn't go down so that it's based on the projected revenue of 2020 as opposed to what the actual revenue is? Is that what that means?
Go ahead and answer. We can answer after your comments if you have multiple questions.
I don't have any further comments until I know the answer to that. Sorry, I have more questions. So I'm confused as to whether that is what it means or if it's a matter of taking away this 3.2% allowed growth rate and allowing it to be a unlimited growth rate. So I think what I'm requesting is the most simplistic, as if I were an elementary school child, definition of what debrucing is, so that as a voter, I can know what I'm actually voting for.
Thank you. Mr. Kate.
Do we have more public comment?
I don't think we do, okay. But maybe we do. What's that?
My name is Matthias, and my question is, I would love to know who is going to be affected with this decision that we're talking about.
Thank you.
I'll take all the questions and then I'll.
You bet. And then we'll come back to council, because I'm sure there's people that would like to speak. I think we're closing the citizen comment period, since no one else has come to the podium. So please, we'll bring it back to council. Mr. Kate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take them in reverse order. Maybe that one's easier. It's really important, particularly with residents in a regional area such as this. This only pertains to the city of Grand Junction. So this is City of Grand Junction. If you're a City of Grand Junction voter, should council move this forward, this will be on the ballot for city residents. That's who it affects, and it affects our operations. So to the question about what does it mean, well, I'm embarrassed that I have to say it again. I apologize after that lengthy presentation. It's so complicated, so I apologize. It removes the cap on revenue and expenditures, and those two are tied. So really what it is if we in what we would the 3.2 is also just kind of a number for an example, and so we have, based upon population and some other metrics, we're allowed to grow by a certain amount, and so that maintains our expenditure based upon that revenue cap. And debrucing would eliminate that revenue cap. It's the third bullet. Limits actual revenue growth annually. So if you debruce, we're only debrucing that third bullet point. Everything else, and these are just, this 3 items are not meant to be exhaustive. Mr. Shaver even referenced Tabor notice. And so part of Taxpayer Bill of Rights was how we communicate these items and stuff. So the 3 are just kind of the 3 major ones. And you don't debruce from Tabor notice. You don't debruce from asking people if you raise debt or increase taxes. It's this cap. And so it's kind of like saying if you run a business that you can only increase by a certain amount each year. And so that was the idea, to limit government. It was to limit the expenditures, and that's the purpose. And this would eliminate that in perpetuity.
We'll bring it back to council for council questions and statements. Rick? Anna?
Yeah, I do want to reiterate my comments at the workshop. I still think that this is early. I disagree with Mr. Simpson about how long we should wait on this, but I do think that November is too soon, and I continue to have concerns about a permanent debrucing question instead of a time-bound one, a limited one.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem. Bill? Councilmember McDaniel? No. Councilmember Norris? No. Well, thank you. I do have some comments. I'm thrilled to be living in a community that for the last 16, 20 years has exemplified what it is to take a dollar and stretch it, to ask the community what to do and how to be proactive, how to improve places like just the Riverside Parkway and how to get around town. Looking at projects long-term, like where are we going to come up with $40 or $50 million for 29 Road to be expanded, to make a complete circle and take traffic off of F Road. I'm thrilled to live in a community that knows mostly that, and God bless you for asking that question about Tabor, because it was written to be confusing. The man that wrote it is a slumlord. It's a proven fact. He was foreclosed upon. He was sent to jail. He was convicted of crimes. I can take this time and tell you that. That's a matter of fact that I ran into Mike Sampson. Mike Sampson's been a long-time Republican county commissioner up in Garfield County. So I asked Mike, I said, Mike, you debruced? He said, yeah, we did, and we're really glad of it. Look at that fire that could come over the hill with an east wind. And I said, how much money do you have in reserves? $90 to $100 million sitting in their bank account. If that fire comes over that hill, they're going to need some money very, very quickly. And it's not all going to come from the federal government, and it's not all going to come from insurance, because that'll be a lie. It'll come from that reserve. And that county will stand up for its people, and it'll be proud to stand up for its people and say, that's what that reserve was for. There's people that will fight this tooth and nail because they don't want to give us, oh my gosh, it might be $800,000 to $1 million a year to continue to provide things that are needed in this community. Needed, wanted, desired, deserved, places for kids to play. We have, I don't even know, is it 450 undeveloped acres of park ground? And that's an ongoing expense. So those are things that growth should handle. I'm passionate about this. I love this place. I want to see the whole community thrive. I don't want to just see F Road thrive. I want to see every place thrive. Orchard Mesa, we are so geographically challenged. I've said it 100 times. You live in a city, if you live here, that's really proud of its financial record. Now we're trying to figure out how to develop 10th and Grand, and if that developer's actually got 10 cents and whatever that's worth tonight. And I really appreciate, Ricky, how we coming in and telling the story, because it's accurate, and it's very accurate to the people on the ground in the neighborhood. And I'm really appreciative of the people that keep coming and telling us stories and making it a difference. It's making a difference in how we think, and that's good. But my frustration is, this is not an open checkbook. We don't run into millions and millions of dollars of excess. What we're trying to do is just recoup where we were 12 years ago. 12 years ago, but everybody says, oh, this is Greg's theme for since he got here. I've heard that so many times. God bless you for telling me, because it reminds me it's not his theme. It's the people that are going to want these things in the future to make this place the most livable place by 2025. So if we weren't growing, it wouldn't be an issue, but we are growing, and we're growing at a nice pace. We've never grown faster than 2.5%. That's a nice pace for any community to handle. Now, some of the challenges are, we got to take some money, $70 million. And by the way, the anticipated road needs are $170 million, not just 70. So the mapping has been done. This staff is very, very capable and has put a lot of hard work into knowing what those needs are. So it's just, that's reality. We're always playing catch up. But the anti-taper people think we're never going to go to them for a tax increase. Of course we are. We're always going to go to them because that's what the law states. But look at the list of communities that have already done this. Gee, there's a lot of communities on there that are growing, and some that are pretty stagnant, to be honest. Palisade just threw out 190 home development. 190 house rooftops anyway, development, to stay small and control themselves. Hey, they do have a subdivision going in. I don't know how many homes, 90 or 100. It was approved 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and it's slowly coming out of the ground. So please know that you have a city and staff that is incredibly budget conscious and is not going to just go blow money all over the streets. But we're going to do the things that the city government's supposed to do, which is infrastructure and safety. Those are factors that we cannot deny ourselves long term. So I look at it, it's either now or later, and we're tasked to look ahead, because the naysayers will write in and say, what a bunch of jokers you are, and you don't even think about 2-3 years from now. We're thinking about 2 and 3 years from now, right now, and that's what we're paid to do and tasked to do from this dais. So I'm really proud of it, because people kept telling me when I was running that put things on a ballot. Ask the people if they want these things. If they don't want it, they'll vote it down. But at least we're asking now. We probably spent 10 years not doing a thing asking-wise. So that's my 10 cents. I'll bring it back and ask for a motion.
Workman, members of council, I move to adopt resolution number 5320. Resolution setting a title and submitting to the electorate on November 3rd, 2020, a measure to allow the city to collect, retain, and spend revenues as a voter-approved revenue changes as provided for and defined by Article X, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Wanda, would you take the roll?
Councilmember Taggart?
Yes.
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yes.
Councilmember Norris?
Yes.
Councilmember Peya?
Yes.
Councilmember Stout?
No.
Mayor Wortman?
Yes, 6-1. Thank you. A resolution 5A or 5BA or 5B, excuse me, a resolution. I'm sorry. No. A resolution calling a special election in the city of Grand Junction, Colorado, concerning and providing for the submission to the electorate on September 3rd, 2020, a measure to allow the city to collect, retain, and spend revenues as a voter-approved revenue change provided for and defined by Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, and other details relating thereto. And I think we just basically did that, but we will ask for staff presentation. Is this just the detail of the clerk putting it together?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. I do not have a staff presentation. You just voted to put an item on the ballot. So what this item does is calls a special election and allows me to allows the city to enter into an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement with Mesa County to coordinate the election.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of council? Seeing none. This is an open citizen comment time. If you'd like to comment. Seeing no one, we will close that. Come back to council and ask for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt Resolution Number 5420, a resolution calling a special election in the city of Grand Junction, Colorado, concerning and providing for the submission to the electorate on November 3rd, 2020, a measure to allow the city to collect, retain, and spend revenues as a voter-approved revenue change provided for and defined by Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, and other details relating thereto.
Is there a second?
Second.
Wanda, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yes.
Councilmember Norris?
Yes.
Councilmember Peya?
Yes.
Councilmember Stout?
No.
Councilmember Taggart?
Yes.
Mayor Wortman?
Yes. Passes 6-1. Non-scheduled citizen and visitors. This is an opportunity for individuals to speak to City Council about on items on tonight's agenda, and then in time may be used to address City Council about items that were discussed at a previous City Council meeting. Is there anyone that would like to address Council? Please do.
My name is Caleb Verganchik, citizen of Orchard Mesa. I initially wasn't going to speak because I'm pretty exhausted. I think pretty much everyone in this room is probably exhausted, but I was just thinking about being exhausted and wanting to share kind of the story of marginalized folks and hopefully get you to understand that a lot of the anger and a lot of what we might consider uncivility that is levied against institutions like government from minorities comes from a place of exhaustion. So as a queer person in this community, I am exhausted because I am a survivor of suicide after verbal, physical, and sexual assault as a teenager. I am exhausted because I have been discriminated against by law enforcement. I'm exhausted because I have faced workplace discrimination. I'm exhausted because I've been called a faggot on our main streets and in businesses within our community. And if you know anything about trauma-informed care, it's that when people live with trauma, to the gentleman's point, I would agree that we are not necessarily victims, but we are survivors. And so we are operating in a mode of survival from the context of our trauma. And so when we come to folks with anger, it's because we are surviving these situations on a daily basis. And so I think that's important because, one, I want to commend the City Council for the work that we've been doing on the task force, but I also share the sentiment, right, that it is incredibly aggravating for these processes to be so slow and drawn out, and I recognize that as a marginalized person that recognizes that there are still youth in our community who are in danger of committing suicide because of their marginalized identities. But I believe in the possibility of it, and I believe in developing those relationships with those communities, but that is not the sole answer, right? So every day, or at least every week, I am engaged in opportunities as a member of the LGBTQ community community to better my community. Whether that's speaking with individuals or organizations about discrimination, challenging the organizations that I work in to be more inclusive, speaking at Colorado Mesa University to students about the importance of diversity and engaging in their communities. So to that effort, I still want to encourage the council to listen to folks who are coming to you because they are traumatized and angry, and we have given you an opportunity to engage independently outside of that community in a meaningful way, and all we are asking, or at least what I have asked consistently, is that the council put forth a universal and combined public message that condemns violence and discrimination against marginalized communities, particularly people of color, because I have spent my entire life fighting against institutions and people in positions of authority who protect and often perpetuate instances of discrimination or assault. So that's where my anger comes from, and that is where the center of my trauma comes from when I come to speak to you. So I hope that story helps you understand the importance of creating a public discourse as a council and demonstrating to your marginalized community members that it is a safe space and that you are open to hearing their stories. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Any other business of council tonight? We are adjourned.